Michael Steele, you were talking about replacement. You replacing Elise Stefanik. Let's just think about the richness of this for a second. Black Americans, their ancestors came here in a most unhappy manner. They were enslaved and drugged here. But if you were black and in America, your ancestors actually set foot on this soil 400 years ago.
Yeah.
There are a lot of Irish Americans. There are a lot of Italian Americans. There are a lot of Italians with names like Stefanik. There are a lot of Americans that came from Eastern Europe that didn't come for another 200 years. So when I heard replacement theory used against black Americans, I said, I think exactly. I get that backwards. I mean, because a lot of Eastern Europeans came to this country like in the 1900s instead of the 1600s. In the 1800s, Irish came in the 1850s. So if you are Irish, Italian American, if you're from Eastern Europe, if you're standing there going, "Oh, black people are replacing true Americans," what a joke!
It is.
What an ignorant, dangerous worldview.
But it plays to the central core of what you see emanating out of Fox and what Elise did with this information. She peddled it. She grifted off of it. She fundraised off of it. So instead of being a leader and standing up and saying, wait a minute, this is not who we are as a country, because of what Joe just said, when you look at the history and the facts, that's the reality. But no, for her, it was a matter of, I'm going to gain some cash on this. I'm going to raise some money off of this. And I don't really give a damn how it's taken in by the public out there. I don't give a damn how some 18-year-old kid sitting somewhere across America decides to get in a car and drive to another community and blow up people. I don't care about that. The only thing I care about is I got paid. That's the kind of leadership we have right now inside the Republican Party. It's the kind of leadership that, again, they want to condemn Liz Cheney. The condemnation belongs at the feet of people like Elise Stefanik, who sits out and perpetuates this crap and puts it in the mainstream of the country because it's a good grift. It's a good day to get paid. And that's the narrative that we see. And the fact that they don't care, we have 10 dead people.
Yeah. So, Peter Baker, we know this is defining our politics right now. Yeah. There's at least some quarters of the Republican Party that are espousing this, or at least nodding and winking at it. The President of the United States is going to go to Buffalo tomorrow. We know he speaks movingly on grief. We'll hear from that. But there's going to be calls for him to do a lot more. Yeah. What should he say about perhaps guns, but also about the sinister, dark replacement theory that has crept into the Republican Party, a party that up until recently he thought he could work with?
Well, this is the problem, of course, for President Biden, is he wants to be a unifier, right? He talked about that coming into office. I think John Meacham helped him craft these eloquent words about bringing the country together. And yet when you are confronted with the kind of hate that he is now confronted with in Buffalo, a city in the United States of America he leads, what do you say about that? Do you simply, unifying words are one thing, but do you confront the hate? How do you confront the hate in a way that doesn't then just simply encourage the same politics of grievance that are out there? Is he going to be heard by people who are looking for reasons to feel put upon, right? In other words, this is all about being told you're not getting something because somebody else is, right? They're taking something from you, which has been a very popular strain of American politics these last number of years, probably for a lot longer than that, but particularly pronounced these last few years. And for Biden to strike notes of unity at the same time as confronting this hatred, confronting that reality is a very, very tough challenge, I think. You saw it even just last week when he talks about ultra-MAGA world, when he begins to take on a bit more of a partisan edge for the midterm elections. He then gets backlash, people saying, well, wait a second, you're supposed to be President Unity. Well, are you able to talk about these themes without losing that idea of being a unifier, or is being unifier not realistic?
All right, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, you got to unify by speaking truth to power. I mean, you people of goodwill who are interested in the truth need to unify behind those who speak the truth. And it's, that universe is getting smaller by the moment. So, John Meacham, let's put this in perspective. It is always so important when we talk about tragedies like this that we talk about, we've brought up what happened with the 16th Street Baptist Church. It's so important that we put things in perspective to understand that this is a battle we fought before, and there is a reason to be hopeful. We talk about the 1960s, we talk about civil rights, but also there was a massive number of Americans who still supported segregation. There was a massive number of Americans who still supported Jim Crow laws. There were millions and millions of Americans that would go into restaurants for whites only, that understood that blacks had to go around the corner and go to restrooms elsewhere. There were millions and millions of good, respectable, so-called, moderate whites who were offended when the first black person moved into their neighborhoods. I mean, the advances that have happened in our lifetime have been meteoric. And so it's always important when we're talking about this to understand, to put it in context, that black Americans have suffered horribly and were third-class citizens until 1964, 1965, and it's been a fight ever since. But things have improved. Reverend Al talks about it all the time. In the last 50 years, things have improved. I guess what is just so shocking is that the quote that you talk about so much, the moral arc of the universe, that it seemed to be going in one direction, and then 5 years ago took a wildly divergent path. And I guess the question is, how do we find our way back to the sort of progress we were making before 2015?
Yeah, and as you say, look, you and I are two white Southern men. Things work out for us in this country. They tend to. And so we stipulate that progress is a relative thing. And the point about the Theodore Parker line, which Dr. King used, the arc of a moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. But it only bends toward justice if there are people fighting to make it swerve. People like John Lewis, people whose names we don't know. Because in the dialectic of politics and human nature, you need people who are insisting on radical, forward-leaning progress, because there are so many people who are reactionary and status-oriented, because they're anxious about their status, which is a huge part of what's unfolding right now. And yes, you go back 50 years, and we have the iconic moments in the civil rights movement. But when Peter and Michael were just talking, I was thinking, 100 years ago, almost exactly, in The Great Gatsby, here's how prevalent these white supremacist views were in America. There was a book, the subtitle of which was called The Rising Tide of Color. The Threat Against Worldwide White Supremacy. Hugely popular book, 100 years ago. So popular that when Scott Fitzgerald was writing Gatsby, published in 1925, he has Tom Buchanan cite it and say, it's a very important book and everyone should read it. It's scientific stuff. It's all been proved. That was a replacement theory that was part of this American struggle. And thank God it is a struggle, because there are at least people trying to make real the promise of the country against these perennial forces of racism and nativism and extremism and misogyny. I mean, it's just this perennial thing, because it's a human struggle, because it's about us. It's about we the people. And so I do think there's hope, because without hope, then we should just close down the republic, and we can't do that. We cannot cede the American experiment to these forces that are devoted to the will to power over the attempt to actually create prosperity and opportunity and liberty for all of us. And the fact that in 2022, we have to say this is really dispiriting. But this is the struggle. It's the struggle of our time. And we can't give up.